Good evening, everyone. The time is 5:01 p.m. in the Belton Independent School District. Okay. Board of Trustees are now convened in a workshop on Monday, October the 20th, 2025. A quorum of board members is present. Please note that Ms. Bass will not join us this evening. This meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. First item on the agenda is public comments. There being none, we'll move on to item 3. Board workshop, Goal 2 update, academic progress. Dr. Golden?
Yes, thank you so much for being here. We are going to engage in a conversation about academic performance for our students, and Gabby Nino is here and she's going to kick us off, and as you noticed, Denise and Ben have joined us as well. There is a really tight partnership with teaching and learning and then with also campus leadership, so together they're going to give you an update on where we are so far this year.
Well, I am thrilled to be at the table with Ben and Denise as well. So as we engage in conversation, and I really want tonight to be very conversational in nature, want us to be able to answer any questions about, if I talk about something at the district level, system support, that they're able to jump in as well and talk detailed at the classroom level and principal support as well. We'll frame our conversation this evening around our focus area, around teaching and learning this year and the alignment between our work in 3 different categories. One being data-informed decisions and assessment literacy. Oftentimes when I'm visiting with you all, we're framing our conversation around a specific data point or an assessment that we've conducted. And we've really emphasized this year, and will continue to do that throughout the year, building what we would call an assessment literacy, understanding the purpose and why of any assessment that we conduct at the student level and what role it plays in the classroom. We'll also talk about how we're empowering educators and doing that through excellence in our curriculum and resources. We've embedded new supports this year that really specifically support content areas in the professional learning communities of teachers who are designing for students and the instructional strategies that they're using. And then we'll also talk about the work that we're doing to foster growth in students and achievement with very high leverage strategies specific to student needs and the tiered supports that we have in place for students across all of our campuses. So let's get started with, I used the language assessment literacy just a bit ago, and I think one of the flaws that I've had in my conversations that I'd like for us to strengthen our conversations around is the big picture of an assessment system and how we balance that in the educational lives of children, and what the meaning is between around each assessment that we conduct with students. I want to draw your attention to this visual and focus on the below the gray line and the above the gray line, and try to orient us a little bit as we move forward in this conversation. Below the gray line is really at the classroom level all day long, every day. And we call those formative assessments. They are ongoing and just in time with students. If a teacher delivers a lesson, they will immediately know in their class, using strategies, of course. There are some students who access this information, who knew it, who knew how to respond, and immediately you can tell that some students are experiencing a greater degree of difficulty, and so there's some responsiveness just in the moment. There may be aligned assignments that we would call formative assessments as well, but that's what happens all day long, every day in a classroom. Above the line is more across our district or even our state assessments that we use that give us a bigger picture of how we are performing as a community, both locally in Belton ISD at any grade level or even in comparison to the state. Right now, the data that we have is what's called universal screening and diagnostic data. Today, when I talk to you about our academic progress as measured by STAR Renaissance, it's important to understand that STAR Renaissance is a universal screener. And what that means is it gives us a quick look, like a dipstick look at all of our students And the intent is to cast a wide net and say, okay, we have a specific content area we need to give a little bit more attention to, or we have a group of students in a grade level or classroom that might be in need of more intensive intervention. The word might is really important because it's a screener. It tells you to dig a little bit deeper to find out what's going on here. And so I want to pause there and just have any conversation or answer any questions about assessments as a whole picture. You do see on here additional windows of time where universal screeners will happen, beginning, middle, and end of year. You also see STAR as a single point in time, and benchmarks that we'll talk about further later on in our conversation. So any questions around assessment or discussion points for us? Okay, all right. I think this is important because oftentimes we land on STAR and you can see it's a single point in a big picture of how we measure student learning. So let's talk a little bit about House Bill 3, just an update of where we are. As a reminder, we have House Bill 3 targets that are very specific to third grade students in literacy and math. Our reading target with House Bill 3 is that we would increase the number of students that score a meets, or percent of students that score meets grade level or higher on STAR reading from 50 to 52% by June of 2026. I think it's really important that I point out that 52% seems really low, and of course we want that much higher. I want to remind us that there are 4 different performance areas on STAR or ranges. One would be did not meet, approaches, meets, and exceeds. And approaches and above is considered passing at the student level. Meets is, we anticipate that they'll have very little challenges as they move into further grade levels. And so at the state level, we set targets at meets and masters. In math, the target would be to increase at third grade from 38% to 40% by June of 2026. On the left side of the screen, you see a visualization based on our beginning of year STAR Renaissance screener. Again, it's a screener. We do a correlation to state performance on STAR, but it is a screener. And the red bar is where our students are performing right now as measured by the STAR Renaissance screener. That black bar to the left of both math and reading illustrates where our target is for the year. So as you can see, which is different than what we experienced last year, and I shared with you all, is that at the beginning of the year, our screener is projecting that with this group of students in third grade, we will exceed our targets in both reading and math.
Forgive me, this is probably a silly question, but are the targets set specifically for the ISD, like the HB3 set it for every district? They have their own targets?
Yes, every single district sets their own target in their own way. Now, they are aligned to meets level performance on STAR. So we all share that in common. Our measure is unique.
How will this change? Because we're doing the formative, the small quiz, whatever. If and when they do finally tweak STAR, and it's not one test, it's a couple of tests.
Yes.
How's that gonna, I guess it's just gonna kind of change our roadmap of how we're following it?
It will, and it will be tweaked. We know that that will happen.
Right.
And there are many puzzles to figure out at the state level around what that's looking like. But if you see on our, on this visualization of a balanced assessment system, what I'm showing you right now is our universal screening with STAR Renaissance. Mm-hmm. In that assessment, you get both an achievement score and a growth projection. The idea behind STAR Renaissance is conceptually the same idea that the new through year assessments are intended to have. Now, what is not clear, these are based on national norms. And so when you look at STAR Renaissance, there are other assessment platforms that you'll hear about, one called MAP, NWA MAP. Those norm students at the same grade level, same age range across the nation. It is not, it's not connected necessarily to your state standards. Texas is different than the rest of the United States. We have TEKS, where the rest of the United States does not have that. So this is nationally normed. What we anticipate with the new assessment, there's some talk that it could be nationally normed assessments that we'd be able to choose. There is also a requirement due to the legislative session for through-year assessments to be designed at the state level as well, that would be connected directly to our standards. So there's so much more to learn about this, and there will be a detailed process and development, but there are some nuanced differences.
So this is a beginning of the year screener. So if we just use math, third grade math as an example, what is the content that's covered on that screener, right? Like how far, I mean, is it really, okay, the end of second grade and a little bit of third grade? Is it looking forward, like, you follow where I'm?
Yes. Yeah. So it is based on, and I'm going to go ahead to these visualizations, not to dive into them yet, but just related to your question. So yes, the assessment is correlated to our state standards. There are national standards that we all share in common.
Right.
And so there is direct alignment to our state standards, and every student starts in a similar place. And then based on how they respond to a question, the next one is entered, and it adjusts on difficulty based on the individual student. So it's slightly different for every child, but it is age level content aligned. Did that answer your question, Chris?
Maybe. So are we testing it like the 3.1 years, like, or grade 3.1 or grade 3.2, or like or maybe what you said is it varies, and if they're working ahead, maybe they're actually
Yes.
higher.
And this is why the
Yeah.
screener conversation is so important. So
Yeah.
we start at the same place. Some of our students will assess multiple grade levels below, and I want to
Yeah.
below, and some will assess higher. And
Okay.
so in the screening concept, it's able to give you a quick look and say, I need to provide these students enrichment and extension of the grade level standards, potentially, dig deeper there, and these students might need to go directly into intervention.
Got it.
So starting place, but then you can get a different age range for each student. Okay, so I jumped ahead to math just in response to your question, and I'll go back. Let me just show you, I'm going to try to explain really clearly what these graphs are before we move forward. They are both, they both capture every single grade level, and it is super small on there, I'm so sorry. Both the left and right capture all of our grade levels that are assessed. The graph on the left is not cohort, so it just means my fourth graders who are sitting in fourth grade today compared to the fourth graders who were sitting in this grade level last year. Okay? So that's what is on the left. And then the graph on the right is cohort. So we're able to say this group of fourth graders who were in third grade last year, how does their performance compare now to how it did at the beginning of the year last year, right? So we're following groups of students. So if you look at the left, I'll give you just a minute to take that in, and let's talk about what stands out in it.
So can I just
Go for
check
it.
my understanding of what you just said?
Yes.
All right, so on the left-hand side, if we look at seventh grade as an example, so what we're saying is this year's seventh graders are at 67%,
Yes.
whereas last year's seventh graders were at 61%.
Yes.
Okay.
Completely different group of students, same grade level.
Okay.
So is it like the slide here on the left, Matt, the 12 shows? Okay, so the black is from last year, red is from this year.
Yes, sir.
So over 50% of the grades we've seen regression. Is that how we read that? Like, basically, or at least 50%.
No, not necessarily. If you're calculating across and you see first is lower, second is lower, so you can see their performance level, achievement right now is lower, but the language of regression is not one I would apply because it's a completely different group of students. If I looked at cohorts, then I could say that. So let's look at the slides on the, or the visual on the right. And if you look at 4th grade, the group of students, I would say regression there, that their performance on this initial screener is telling us that their entry point is different than it was last year.
And this is entry point. This is what, first month or so of school?
Yes, they start this within the second week of school, then they start these. And so that's again why the screener is so important for us to wrap that concept around in this big balanced assessment framework. Because it really does tell you, like, what are we holding on to, or just some real quick student groups that I might zero in on.
And how many of these benchmarks do we get to do a year before the STAR? Is it 3?
So we do 3 screeners.
Okay.
One is at beginning of year, middle of year. This end of year screener falls after STAR is administered.
Okay.
But we will do benchmark assessments in between.
Yeah, all the way across, yeah.
Yes. So you can see where it says benchmark, and those are more comprehensive and aligned to the curriculum that we've delivered and the instruction that we've delivered in the classroom.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
So when I look at the screen on the left, kind of what Riley was saying is the regression, but were these students assessed this time last year?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So 2 different groups of students
Right.
versus the cohort.
Versus the cohort.
Yeah, so, man, if you look at, say, 4th grade, right, the red bar for 4th grade is
Right.
66%.
Yeah.
So those kids last year were the black bar in 3rd grade,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Am I thinking about that
Are
right?
you on
there?
the left side trying
On
to?
the left side?
Yeah, on the left side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on
Yeah.
the, yes, on the left side, if we focus on one, sorry, I'm gonna jump up real quick, so instead of just raising my hand. So these 4th graders,
The red 4th
are a
graders,
different group of students than this.
right, are the
Right.
black
On the
3rd
third
graders.
grade.
Yes,
Yeah,
so it's easier to think that way if you come here.
Yeah.
So this would be this year's 4th graders
yep.
and how they were performing at the beginning of year.
Last year.
Same window last year.
Yeah.
Same kids.
Yes, yes. Does that help me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that what we would expect to see? I mean, is this a kind of, I mean, it's beginning of year. What is our, do we have an expectation
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, we do. Historically, what you will hear a ton of in educational conversations and research is summer slide.
Right.
That is a common term, in particular in higher poverty areas, that is typically more pronounced. And so you would expect to see some degree, you can expect to see some degree of regression. What I would expect to see is that we're at a minimum maintaining. Our human instinct wants to see that your visualizations are always going up.
Right.
But if you think about, I was in 3rd grade this year, and I'm in 4th grade this year. The content that I'm learning has increased in difficulty. And so if my my graphs are staying the same, I have moved up in a grade level and my performance has stayed the same. So I'm growing
Right.
as a student. If I move into the next grade level and my growth trajectory, my bar is higher, then I'm exceeding expected growth. So yes, we could see regression in some areas. What we see in this is if you look at both 4th grade and 7th grade, those cohorts are showing a greater degree of summer regression than others. Those were also, when I was sharing data with you all last year, those groups of students were the ones that we showed increased concern over, or a greater
Right.
degree of concern last year as well. And so those are areas that our support is, we have a higher degree of support there as well, with our teachers. And we'll talk a little bit about how Ben and Denise and my team have been working through those conversations with campuses. But those are grade levels that we've had a greater degree of concern with over time. So let's take a look at reading. And same orientation to the data. And what stands out here, again, both in math and reading, is that our 4th and 7th grade students are having a greater degree of challenge retaining their learning as they return to school this year. And it's in both areas, both literacy and math. One interesting piece of data, Todd and I have been working together, and he's been very helpful. We've been looking, yes, at curriculum-related concerns, but also how we're supporting teachers in those grade levels. And I'll give you an example in 7th grade as one of our areas of lower growth. We have 64% of our teachers are new hires. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're new teachers, but they are new to Belton ISD. And so that means we have to increase our support for them anytime you're learning a new curriculum, a new instructional timelines, and new resources.
Do you mind going to the reading slide?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I thought I did.
Okay.
My fingers are clicking. Thank you, Melinda. We've got to onboard people and intensely support them with those resources. Thank you. I thought I clicked. In reading, again, the same organization of slides. Let me tell you about the places where there's not information or you see not applicable. On the left, remember it's year over year. This year we added assessment in English 1 and English 2 on our STAR Renaissance assessments. That was not a data source that we had. And with the implementation of TIA, we added that as an assessment instrument for us. And so when it says NA, that's because last year we didn't have students testing there.
Makes sense.
Okay? And so you can see that both on the left and the right. On English 2, the furthest on the right, we have students in English 2 now, so we have data for them assessing. In the graph on the right, you also see that in kindergarten, there's an NA. Remember, that's cohort data. So those students weren't with us last year, so we didn't have any information for them, or they were in pre-K. And then in 2nd grade, it also says NA for cohort. That's because the assessment that students take in 1st grade and kindergarten is what's called early literacy. It's more around phonemic awareness and letter recognition. When students go to 2nd grade, the assessment changes to reading, and so they should be able to apply those early reading skills on that assessment. And so that's why we have missing data there as well. So let me stop talking for a second and answer anything or questions that you have about reading.
I mean, I'm encouraged by the right side.
The cohorts.
Yeah, when you look at the cohorts, right, I mean, same kids, like pretty decent jumps, right, from last year to this year, with the exception of 7th grade, right, 1st grade. My natural question is, well, why? What are we doing, right? I mean, does this go back to the phonics stuff that we added a couple years ago? Does this, right, do we have any idea, like, what's the secret sauce here?
So there's a couple of things that
Yeah.
I do believe are in the secret sauce. Now, we've got to remember that the phonics rollout is not up into our middle school and
Right,
high school
right,
level, right?
Right.
But I do believe that more consistency in practices. Yes, we made a big investment in phonics 3 years ago. We have taken every single teacher through the reading academies. And so having shared intense learning for teachers can only strengthen your practices and also strengthen your support for people because they've had aligned learning. We also, while we just adopted resources in the spring, the process that we put in place to adopt resources is learning in itself. Like we're studying resources in alignment with what we know about reading development. So those are some of the things that I think are in place supporting literacy development and growth.
Yeah, because when I look at 3rd, 4th, 5th, and even 6th, right? I mean, those are the biggest jumps. I think those kids potentially were with the phonics program a couple years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So as we move, I want to make sure there are any other questions related to this beginning of your screener.
Gabby, just as a reminder, our new curriculum was adopted up through what grade level?
It's
grade level.
It's all elementary. It's all the way through 5th. Okay. So let me talk just very briefly, and then we're going to move into what are we doing with this information and how are we supporting at the classroom level. So critical thinking, increasing students demonstrating critical thinking has been an emphasis for us for the last couple of years. We keep getting tighter and tighter with what we're looking at. You may recall that we have defined what critical thinking means and broken it into different elements. And this year we've leveled up our focus on really emphasizing asking questions and evaluating arguments at the student level. Those are areas that we have seen, have not seen the growth to the degree we would like to. And so we are really looking at that this year, in particular with student evidence. On the left, and we have an observation tool that every campus leader uses, and it helps inform how we work together when we're talking about critical thinking. The data on the left it comes from our very first wave of observation in the in the fall, I'm so sorry. And what it captures here is in what percentage of classrooms did we see at least 2 or more of the critical thinking elements. You're not going to see all elements at the same time. And so what we wanted to see were 2 or more critical thinking elements observed. And in 86% of classrooms, we saw that at the student level, 2 or more elements. And so that's just data for you to see, progress in our classrooms, and really alignment around critical thinking. So I want to,
Gabby,
did you have
can
a
you go
question?
back?
Yes.
And you may have said it, and I apologize. Did you talk about why those 2 are boxed in red?
I
you
did
get
a little
that?
bit, but let me
Okay.
go back to it just very specifically. We have been observing all elements in the classroom, both what it would look like for a teacher to be designing experiences, that's the teacher evidence, and then also what it would look like for students to be demonstrating it. And over the last 2 years, consistently asking questions and evaluating arguments have been lower in our observations than the other areas, and so we're emphasizing those this year.
So can you take me from the 86% on the left down to our goal on the bottom?
Yes.
Right.
So our goal is specifically related to asking questions and evaluating arguments. The way our observation,
The observations across all 5.
the observation is across all 5.
Okay.
Now, Chris, I will tell you, we have data for each campus in all of the elements. It was super complicated to visualize that. And what we want to see at a high level is the integration of all elements. I will tell you that it does continue to be an area that, I mean, our desire to emphasize these 2 is illustrated in our fall collection.
All right. Okay, because where I was going to go is, okay, great, this is our goal. Do we still think this is the right goal based on the numbers that we're seeing? Or do we need to revisit that?
Absolutely. No, we absolutely feel like it is still the right.
Okay.
100% feel that way. Okay. Did you have another question?
No,
Chris?
no.
Okay. So just drawing back to the focus areas that we started around curriculum instruction, leadership and planning, making data-informed decisions and differentiating supports for campuses is where we will focus as we continue our conversation today. And I want to start with, Ben's going to pass down a tool for you all, and so am I. We're going to go deeper into the how, and I want you guys to stop me, so that we can answer questions along the way. As it relates to curriculum and instructional design, we always start with our vision around instruction, and you see that little graphic up at the top right. One of the elements of our instructional vision that we think is so important is how you are intentionally planning for the students that are sitting in front of you in the classroom. You all have heard us say the 3 letters PLC over and over again, and that's a professional learning community. The basis of how a learning community works together is asking 4 questions. And those 4 questions are, what is it that we want our students to know? How will we know if they've learned it? What are we going to do if they mastered it? And what are we going to do if they did not? And so this tool that's in front of you is a process map that was built alongside teachers, instructional coaches, principal leaders, to help articulate what does that process look like? What are the questions that we will ask ourselves along the way in order to know that we are designing appropriate instruction for our students? You may or may not have seen these in classrooms as you've been visiting. Where Ben and Denise and I see these is on the walls and planning sessions. Our curriculum documents are built around these questions, and we're seeing more and more teachers use these in their planning process. So this is a tool for support, and everything that I show you from here forward will align to those 4 questions to show that the tools that we're giving teachers support this intentional planning process. So the very first question is what we want students to know. Just a quick math fact, based on the number of standards that are articulated in our TEKS, it would take 22 years of school for students to be exposed to the standards. Not to master them, just to be exposed to them. And so it's important for us to think about which are the most important standards to focus on in instruction. And so all of our coordinators, alongside teachers, hold each of our standards up to a criteria to determine what are the most high priority. And questions they ask are, is this an enduring standard? That means it'll apply across grade levels. They build on each other. Is the standard in front of me one that has high leverage? If a student's master this, it's going to help them master other standards as well. We ask, is it a readiness standard? They have to learn this in order to be ready for the next grade level. And then we also ask, is it connected to our state assessment? What is the frequency that this standard will be assessed on our state assessments? And then the last category is based on our teacher judgment with students who are in front of them, is this one that needs to be high leverage? So our coordinator team goes through every single standard and says, is this a high priority learning standard or not? And if it is, then we have leveraged that in the curriculum that we've designed. And it doesn't mean that the others are not important, but we have to emphasize these high priority learning standards. And then we take those standards, and the visual that you see on the right is our scope and sequence. This is a tool that brings every single subject and grade level together following the calendar year, and brings all the information a teacher or leader would need into one place. So Ben and Denise, when they are with a campus principal going to a classroom, they can say, we're about to go into Mr. Morgan's classroom. It is October 20th. What should they be learning? This is a math classroom. And so they can click on any one of those links and immediately see across Belton ISD what should be the high priority learning standards we will see in this classroom that we're walking in right now. So any thoughts around that or questions that you might have? Just an organization of standards.
What do we do if you walk in the classroom on October 20th and they're not when they're supposed to be? I mean,
So I'll let Ben and Denise jump in on here, but that's a wonderful question because our timelines are flexible enough that you have a range of time that you're covering things. We want teachers being responsive to students who are sitting in front of them. And so we have recommended days and ranges. That allows us to reduce variability across our system, but does not become so rigid. So if something is way out there, way misaligned, then I'll let Ben and Denise talk about how they work through that with the principal. But for the most part, we are seeing a much higher degree of alignment in instructional experiences, just a few days in variability.
You might be off by a couple of days, but you've got, really, it needs to just prompt questions, makes you curious.
Yes.
Okay, is it because this class took a couple of extra days on a particular concept and they just needed more time and the teacher needed to adjust for those students? What the principal has to really watch, though, is if in my classroom it's taking me, let's say I'm 3 weeks off, and then the next unit, I'm 3 to 4 weeks off. What could happen if they don't get within a reasonable timeline? I could end up where my students at the end of the year don't even get exposure to whatever those standards are at the end of the year. So it really is just about asking good questions about the pacing, and then certainly being able to see if we're not even in the ballpark. That's a clue that maybe we're not following the district's curriculum. And again, I think it prompts just good questions and seeking to understand. And to me, that's the coaching and follow-up with the teacher. Do you add anything?
Well, the only thing I would add is there are lots of variables, and so I think when we go into a classroom, especially using our waterfall document from Get Better Faster this year, there are two trajectories. One is management and one is rigor. And so we would talk about, why do we think that this particular classroom or this teacher is behind the pacing? And so are we seeing a problem with management that we want to address and give some coaching and feedback and support? Or was the rigor off, which is causing the pacing to be off? But also, our principals and assistant principals are in a lot of the PLC meetings and planning meetings where the teachers are planning these units. So they're hearing where they're supposed to be. And so we would walk potentially 3 or 4 grade level classrooms, all of the same, that are supposed to be in the same place. And we look for trends. And we say, of those 4 classrooms we walked, 3 were really tightly aligned, the 4th is not. We need to do a little bit of investigating and asking questions, just like Melinda said. So that would be the coaching, and that's how we would work through that.
I think the key to that, mainly to answer your question, is our job is to coach the principals, to ask good questions about their actions,
Yes.
but then to ensure there's follow-up with the teacher. Like, we're not gonna just go into a classroom and see something that we're pausing on and just let it go. We're gonna make sure that there's action and follow-up to seek to understand and to coach, to, like Melinda said, to coach the teacher the most appropriate way.
Here's something from my perspective that's been really magical since we've worked to this place. When I was in Ben and Denise's role, it was hard for me sometimes to go into classrooms and determine where we were in our instructional timelines or what should the focus be. I may be in a classroom on one campus and the kids were learning about soil and deposits in soil in science. And then I'd go visit another campus and they were studying energy and like completely different focus in science, like not connected at all. Neither one right or wrong, but not connected. So when we're talking about how we support campuses and differentiate, that alignment is critically important. What I hear now is, last week we're with principals and I'm able to pull up with a group of 4 principals and they're saying, Gabby, the assessment that we're using in this unit of study, there seems to be a little bit of a misalignment between what the instructional experiences are. And so just the system signals are completely different. They're pointing me in the direction of 8 places where our curriculum needs to be strengthened. Or they say, you know what, my teachers are not having a hard time with that. Can we schedule visits for your team of fourth grade teachers to go visit classrooms at this campus because there's such tighter system alignment because of tools like this that have been developed.
There's only one other thing I would add, and made me think about this, but the teams of teachers plan what are called common formative assessments. And so when they're planning for a unit of study, they look at the lessons and determine it's time to plan a common formative, which means all of the grade level teachers are given the same formative assessment, and they talk about, we're going to give these questions, we're going to plan to give it in this way so that there's some standardization around it. And so if we notice that there's someone who's falling behind, they're not able to give that common formative. That's another thing that we coach the principal around so that we get that same information. It's like, so you need, have them go in and have some follow-up conversation about when are you going to get to that formative assessment so that we can discuss it as a grade level. So that gives us information about what the students are learning and where they need to have some reteaching.
So how much time, so much of this is going to be dependent upon observation in the classroom. And there's only two of you, and y'all are coaches, you're not principals. But we have principals and we have APs at these. So to give us an idea, on any given week, how many, is every teacher getting visited by a principal and AP once, multiple times? And I don't think any of us really understand, how often these principals and APs, is it only on Wednesdays, or,
No.
No.
So how does that work? How do we know, how do the principals budget their time so that them and their APs are able to do this? Kind of walk me through that.
So that is a great question, and it's one that we've been prioritizing this last 2 years, this year especially. Going back to what Denise said about the observation, feedback, and coaching model that we've implemented this year, one of the criteria that we had to do was to increase the number of walkthroughs that were in the classrooms to provide that high quality feedback to teachers. And so part of our non-negotiables with our principals and assistant principals are the frequency of getting into classrooms. Now, we don't have a set number of informal walkthroughs. We do have, per our policy that we revised this summer, they have to have 2 formal walkthroughs. Each teacher gets one in the fall, one in the spring. That's a little bit longer. It's a 15-minute walkthrough. But beyond that, each campus has their own walkthrough tool that they're using. And so the expectation is that principals are protecting time on their calendar. Assistant principals are strategically protecting time on their calendar so that they're going into classrooms weekly.
Okay.
And so teachers should be getting feedback. Maybe not weekly. It depends on, too, the teacher. Some teachers are going to get more feedback than others because we're going to differentiate our supports for teachers just like we would with our students.
Right.
So Denise, why don't you elaborate and share? So what's the system check on that? So what do you look to as the supervisor of campus principals? What do you look to when you're curious about, are we getting in classrooms, are we giving teachers feedback?
So on our agendas, the principals have linked their walkthrough tracker, we call it, and so we open that up and look at it. And so we can look and see how many walkthroughs each teacher has had. And on this tracker, going back to our waterfall document, they are documenting, was my feedback management or rigor-based? What was that action step? When did I go back into the classroom to follow up and make sure that that was implemented? And we've talked a lot about that with, if you don't go back and follow up to ensure that it was implemented, then it's just a suggestion.
Right.
So if you're giving coaching, you need to make sure you're saying, in 2 more days or in 3 days, I'm going to be coming back to make sure that you're implementing it because it's bite-sized pieces. And so we can see, and it really does vary. On the tracker, some teachers, based on potentially experience or need,
That makes
are
sense.
getting more walkthroughs than others.
Right.
I'd just add to that too. One of the things that we've added as another layer for accountability on that is what we call teacher talks. And so we'll pull up a random grade level. So I'll say for mine, 6th grade, I'll say, let's talk about your 6th grade math team. And so what we've done is we've elevated the conversation about our principals and their ability to speak to where each teacher is in that moment. And what we've done is align the language directly to the waterfall document. Because in the past, it would be, well, Jeff's doing great. The kids love him. No. let's talk specific language about classroom management and rigor. So let's use the language that we're using for the feedback to teachers to really speak to where that teacher is, and then based on that, to Denise's point, where are they, where are they, and what are you doing right now to support them?
So does every principal, let's say at the elementary school level, if we are this structured, do they have, the principals have access readily at their fingertips to these formative value, I guess, the testing that's constantly, there's a smaller test that we're doing? I mean, can a principal say, I want to look at my third grade and look across the entire campus and be like, okay, I have 4 third grade classes, and this one's not, their test grades are not looking like they should
Yes.
be.
Absolutely. Yes, they keep track of performance data as well as teacher feedback data. And when we go visit a principal, we go on classroom walks with them, and we ask them a lot of these questions. So these are the classrooms we're going into. Talk to us about this teacher. What have you been coaching them on? What should we expect to see when we go into the classroom? Then when we come back, based on what you thought we would see or what we expected to see, how did it go? What did we see? Was it what you expected or not? Okay, then let's take a look at what is the next coaching move that we're going to use.
So that's at the campus level. What about the next level in admin? Gabby, y'all, Dr. Golden, do y'all also have access? Can you pull up,
Yeah.
all right, I want to see Pirtle third grade, and I can pull up and see everything that's going on in real time so that I know, hey, we have a problem right now? Does that?
Yeah, and I'll show you a little bit example of it, but system structure support, as an example, I'm going to build on what they said and how we work that with principals. Tomorrow we're with principals and principal learning. And so they've been tasked with studying their feedback and observation and what are the trends that you see in your own observations, and what are the needs for instructional strategies on your campus based on your observations. And then tomorrow we're in principal learning, and they'll have the opportunity to learn around some of the key strategies that they feel their campus needs right now. But directly tied to your question, if you look up here, we have our team, whenever we have shared assessments, we pull data, what's called data trackers for campus. And if you look on the bottom right, I'll explain this, and then I'll tell you the whole picture of why this was in. But our campuses will get a spreadsheet for every grade level and assessment. And those first 2 columns are student name, and I've just marked them out, right? And then every time they administer an assessment, this spreadsheet gets populated for them with the student's performance on an assessment, and it goes down to the TEKS level or the standard level. This is an example of how a campus has then used the data and has organized groups that we call Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 groups based on the level of support that a child needs and who will provide that support. When the report initially comes from district, it will look like this, lots of color coding on it, and you can see by standard what that looks like. So yes, at the district level, I can pull, Ben and Denise could pull, Holly's team, Holly really is who helps us. She's masterful at that. But we could pull at any given point to any classroom grade level or teacher.
And Jeff, what I would add, so what you're describing also is what we call it our cadence of accountability. And we don't mean accountability in a bad way. But part of, there's a meeting structure, it's called TLL, Teaching, Leading, and Learning. And so they are meeting together every other week, I believe, is the cadence. And then they once a month, like next Monday, then we are on a campus. I join that meeting. So we'll go to Southwest, for example. I think that's who we're scheduled to be at next. And then all 4 of us are meeting there, and we'll look at the data, see what data we're looking at. They'll talk about what they're working on, any celebrations, areas of concern. We'll go into classrooms. We come back, and then that's my time to listen to them, and that's part of my coaching with them. What are they seeing? What level of support are they providing? So it's at a couple of levels. It's with campus principals. They meet as a TLL group, and then I once a month am with them specifically looking at data on a campus, walking the campus.
Okay. Thank you.
Sounds like we've got multiple gauges in the system. right?
One of the things that we've worked on this year too, that I'm super proud of, is we've elevated our supports, is we just got our star RIN that y'all looked at the beginning of year. We've scheduled meetings with the campus principals and sometimes their teams if available, like their ICs, their APs, if they're available to join us. But we look at that data with the principals directly. And so that we're all on the same page and we're getting down to the what is the areas that we really need to focus on. For my middle school principals, it was no surprise, y'all saw it, 7th grade is a priority for us. But there are some wins too, and we like to pull those out too, because we want them to celebrate those. Like, for example, South Belton Middle School, they were at 78% at their 6th grade reading. That's something to celebrate for a campus, and so we have to pull that type of data out and celebrate those things. But we also have to identify with the principals. One of the things that Akia is doing, for example, to take it to another level for her, is she's in every PLC going over this data. So after we met with her, she went and met with every PLC reading and math team. But then she's following up and she's meeting with each individual teacher to look at these reports that Gabby's just talking about, down to the individual student, because she wants to be able to hear the teachers be able to speak to where each one of their kids are and what their plan is for those kids to move them forward to the next assessment.
So,
You know-
go ahead, sorry.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
With all these gauges in place, Ben, how comfortable are you guys that we're going to detect a problem where we're going to have enough time to remedy that during the course of the year?
I think the more frequent that we're in communication and working with each other, that's why we have these multi-tiered
Right.
approach, so that we see at high level, we go down to the campus, we're having conversations, the teachers having conversations with the teachers, and the teachers are having conversations with the students. But an example that we found, and I'm going to use South again because we were just there last week, and it's one of our priority schools,
Right.
is that we found one of our intervention tools that they were using, Akia, because she was on top of it, was able to pinpoint an area of monitoring that was going to be an issue. Had we not had that conversation earlier on, we would have had an intervention tool in place that we think but she's assuming that's working, but because we're very intentional in our cadence of accountability and assessment and monitoring that work, we're able to catch it and make adjustments so that now that tool is actually being used correctly. So that's just one example of how these conversations are really helping us to.
We're diagnosing the problem a lot quicker.
Yes.
Sure. Every single one of our subjects, in addition, connected to that, the way we've built our instructional guidelines or guidance for teachers is based on research. Like, there is high quality research that says this is the amount of instructional time you should spend in math or in science. And so we've given guidance to our campuses on what the instructional minute allocation should be. And we've also embedded into that how much time should be spent for what we've called as flex time or intervention time. Some campuses call it win time, but we have built into our instructional minutes time for there to be responsiveness to students, whether it be for enrichment or an extension. We have guiding documents now that were built as a cross-campus, cross-grade level collaboration called our multi-tiered systems of support, that every campus understands these beliefs and these expectations. And just a couple of pieces of evidence to show you aligned to that is, this is just our guiding documents on the left. And I'm happy to share that. I put it in board bulletin a couple weeks ago, but I'm happy to again. But you can see on the right, that very colorful spreadsheet is a master schedule. It is very complicated to master schedule on a campus, whether it be elementary or secondary, but you will always see in master schedules flex time or win time or goal time. And that is a specific flexible time in the master schedule for teachers to respond to individual student needs, and they do that in a collaborative. The spreadsheet that I pulled up when you asked that question, Jeff, is a tool that's used to help plan those flex times. So we look at every single student's data, or the campus team does, and ask what supports does that student need, in particular during the flex time of the day. And so that bottom example is just to show how those times are planned for individual students. Okay, we've touched a little bit on the leadership and planning support as Ben and Denise have jumped in, but there is intense support for our principals through coaching, through our shared learning time. They also pull small groups of campus leaders based on like needs to support learning and problem solving together with like campuses who are walking through some similar challenges. And then just another learning support that's in place. My team, the teaching and learning team, will also host just in time what we call lunch and learns based on anything that's emerging. I used the example earlier of some principals saying, hey, we're noticing a misalignment in an assessment in this grade level. So we might be able to jump on with a group of people to support learning just in time for those priority needs. And as we wrap up, are there other questions? We have about 3 minutes that have emerged for you all in this conversation.
Yeah, I do like I'm saying. Tonight, it was shared that 64% of our 7th grade were new hires. That to me was alarming. And then I know we've talked in the past about, how can I say this? So when we reviewed the statistics and the data in the past, it's been said that we could almost see what classrooms students were struggling and failing. And when we went and looked at those classrooms, sometimes it was because they had 1, 2, and 3, not just 1, 2 and 3 teachers in the year, and because of turnover. So to me, that's one of the trends that I'm concerned about is learning more about that. I mean, we went to did a walkthrough the other day at an elementary school. Manuel asked, hey, how many new teachers do we have? 1 teacher in that elementary school. And so when we're hearing that some of these grades, and then it's going to be other schools, that there's a big discrepancy, that's something that I think we need to look into a little bit more, or at least I'd like to understand more about that, of how do we have 64% turnover? And at least new hires might not all be turnover if they're in their classes, but in 1 grade.
Yeah, so one, there's a statewide trend. It's a regular conversation for us. It may not be turnover, to your point. It may be us aligning to strengths. But one of the reasons I wanted to share that information with you all is it really reflects the need for support that we have for people. There are 2 different sides of a continuum. We have new teachers come to us that say, oh my gosh, I've never received this level of support within our curriculum supports. This is what I've needed all along. And then we have other pieces of data where we say, we have newer teachers here. My team needs to support that campus differently, whether it be a specific grade level, it could be a specific content area. And so I wanted you guys to know that this is how we work together in collaboration between human resources and teaching and learning. It could be a curriculum related thing that we are addressing. It also could be the way we support people differently is what we need to address. So absolutely, we can learn more about that. Sure.
Gabby, the primary heavy curriculum revisions took place in what summer? Which summer? Was it summer 24?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So we're 25, 26 right now.
Okay. So last year was the first year we implemented written curriculum that had the significant rewrite that happened.
Right.
Last year was also the year that we went back and did foundational learning, so that across the system, when we talk about professional learning communities and when we talk about what should be happening in that time, that foundational training to realign our system happened last year. Multi-tiered system of support, the development of, go back real quickly.
Last year. Oops.
The intervention system, left side, was developed and utilized for the first time
last fall.
Last year.
It was developed over the.
So I say all of that, there has been a significant amount of system change that's happened in a year and almost a semester. The way in which we are tracking student data, that did not exist 2 years ago.
Right.
And so I say that, one, kudos to the teachers that have come together to help write curriculum, all of the staff that's working to put these systems in place. But these are a lot of system level changes for our teachers. And so, and then add on top of this, if you're elementary, you now are implementing a new curriculum, ELAR curriculum, and you went through Math Academy training, so a completely different Math Academy training for all of our elementary teachers that teach math. So I just say that because that's a lot of change to support a classroom teacher who's there, and by the way, maybe there's a day her kids have a day. And so he or she might be off on a pacing guide, or might realize based on data needs to go back and do some reteaching. And so I just say I'm incredibly proud of a lot of hard work of our teachers to absorb and implement these kind of system changes, and it just will continue to take a little time for those to stay and just do nothing but, you adopt new good practices. They get better and better the longer you adopt them. The curriculum gets better and better the more people are using it, the more data we have to put on top of the curriculum to say, okay, the state might have prioritized something a little different this year on a state assessment than what was prioritized in our curriculum documents. So that data each year will inform and help that curriculum get better and better. Okay. Oh. We were
Okay.
under time last time, we're a little over
We
time
were.
this time.
All right. Well, that concludes our board workshop this evening. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 6:03 PM.